Peugeot's 308 family hatch gets far more polish in this third generation guise, with smarter packaging, extra engineering options and a bit more useful technology. The result is a more desirable product than you might expect from this familiar Gallic brand. You might be surprised at how much you'd like it.
You might not have ever thought of the Peugeot 308 family hatch as being truly aspirational, but maybe it's time to start. Peugeot's been making Focus class models for half a century, and we're already on the third generation of the one-badge 308. But this is the most upmarket version yet, in keeping with the Peugeot brand's more premium positioning within the Stellantis group, a conglomerate formed back in 2021 by the merger of PSA and Fiat. Mid-sized compact Peugeots with A3 designation actually go all the way back to the 301 of 1932, progressing through the pre-war 302 and the post-war 304 to the 305 and 306 models of the 80s and 90s. At the turn of the century, volume sales continued to be chased with the forgettable 307 of 2001, the underpinnings of which also formed the basis for its less popular successor, the first generation 308 of 2007, which was replaced by the Mark II 308, this car's predecessor, in 2014. That second generation 308 wasn't really a car many customers would have chosen in preference to a Golf, let alone anything premium. But this Mark III version, launched in 2021 and on sale here since early 2022, might be. Everything's different, even the front Peugeot grille badge. And whether you choose this hatch body shape or the alternative SW estate, the sharky looks clothe a cabin that could just be the segment's most sophisticated. More significant still is the news that this car will be the first in the family hatchback segment to also be available in full electric form. Until now, cars of this size as EVs have usually been SUVs and crossovers. If you're not quite ready for the full battery lifestyle, there are plug-in hybrid options, and conventional petrol and diesel engines are still available too. So premium values with mainstream appeal. Is that what we've got here? Well, to find out, you're going to need the industry's most comprehensive car review, the Car and Driving Road Test. So, what's it like? Well, certainly your first impressions feel positive as you settle in behind the small, low-set steering wheel that's now an established brand trademark and peer above it at the slick-looking virtual dial pack. This car wants to convince you that Peugeot's back as a brand making engaging driver's cars. So let's see. 40 years ago, handling excellence would have been expected from a Peugeot hatch of this size. In the 80s and 90s, models like the 205 and the 306 set class benchmarks in that regard, even in their humbler forms. By the turn of the century, though, the Lion brand had conceded that territory to Ford, and its hatch contenders had become forgettable and derivative. More recently, though, things have been changing. By the new century's second decade, the unusual i-cockpit dashboard design we've just referred to made its debut with a diddy little steering wheel that made 208 and 308 models of the period feel sportier, even if ultimately they weren't. All that was really needed was a genuine level of dynamic drive to back it all up, which is what this third generation 308 claims to be able to deliver. Not everyone is in favour of the i-cockpit layout. You'll find plenty of motoring writers who hate it, but we'd urge you to try it for yourself and make your own mind up. We rather like the way it imparts a more direct, connected feel into the on-the-road experience. Yes, the curious driving position with its wheel positioned down towards your lap seems strange at first, but you quickly adjust as pesky roundabouts become wrist-flick chicanes. At which point, if you enjoy your driving, you'll notice that, as advertised, this third-generation 308 is indeed rather engaging. Not everyone wants that, of course, and we can imagine plenty of owners of the previous generation model finding the ride of this one rather over-firm and the agile, responsive steering a touch too direct. If that's you, the Stellantis group has the perfect solution ready in the form of Citroën C4, which shares the same drivetrains you get here, but engineers them with ride comfort as a priority. Don't get us wrong, this Peugeot won't shake your fillings out the next time you have to tackle that speed bump infested section of your regular morning commute, but its damping balance has certainly been set to engage with the road surface rather than cosset you from it. Overall, we preferred it to the rather over-firm ride of the Ford Focus ST line model we'd been sampling just before this test. There's enough spring and wheel travel to deal with torn-up tarmac, but not so much that body roll becomes an issue when you're pushing on through tight turns, at which point quite prodigious levels of grip are revealed, despite the eco remit of the Michelin Primacy economy tyres. Those, by the way, emit little in terms of tyre roar, which adds to the impressive standards of cruising refinement, partly made possible by thicker window glass with acoustic laminated side panes. Engine info here must be prefaced by the caveat that all of the power plants on offer must be paired with automatic transmission, a curious decision on Peugeot's part given the number of cars still sold in this sector with a stick shift. You can buy a manual version of this 308 on the continent, and the Stellantis group segment rival that most closely clones this model, Vauxhall's 8th generation Astra, can also be had as a manual. For our market, though, all combustion 308s get the Lion brand's EAT8 8-speed auto, controlled not by a gear stick but an impulse selector shifting switch, so diminutive that you might easily mistake it for an electric window button. This transmission comes with steering wheel paddles, and it's one of those eco-minded autos that constantly hunts around for the highest possible ratio, with the speed of its changes dictated by your choice of setting from this multi-driving mode selector. The predictable options are Eco, Normal and Sport, the latter, rather curiously, switching the dash graphics to green rather than the usual red. If you happen to be trading up from the previous generation version of this model, you'll recognise the options at the conventional end of the engine range because hardly anything's changed, which means the usual choice of 130 horsepower units, a 3-cylinder 1.2 litre PureTech 3-cylinder petrol, and a 1.5 litre Blue HDI 4-cylinder diesel. 62 miles an hour from rest is either a fraction under or a fraction over 10 seconds, depending on your choice, and both top out at around 130 miles an hour. The petrol variant has around 30% less pulling power, but still manages to feel more engaging because it carries around 79 kilos less weight than the diesel, and up to 344 kilos less than the variant we're trying here, the plug-in hybrid. If you don't feel the need to weigh your 308 down with the weight of 3 baby Asian elephants, we'd understand completely. You can certainly feel the difference all that bulk makes when turning into tight corners at speed. But the attraction of being able to drive your 308 for up to 37 miles without troubling fossil fuel is certainly strong, providing you can stomach the substantial price premium the brand wants for its PHEV tech. As usual, with the company's plug-in models, there's the curious combination of frugal electrification tinselled around a 180 horsepower, 1.6 litre petrol turbo PureTech engine, dropped from mainstream use because it wasn't economic enough. Here, it's embellished by a 109 horsepower electric motor powered by a 12.4 kilowatt-hour battery, and depending on model choice, 2 system outputs are available, 180 horsepower, or for quite a bit more, the 225 horsepower version we have here. A largely pointless extra spend because it has exactly the same torque output and only improves the lesser version's 7.6 second 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint time by a tenth of a second. PHEV 308 motoring comes with its own 3 distinct driving modes, but in reality, you'll almost always use only one of them, hybrid, which optimises alternation of electric and internal combustion power. The other 2 options are electric, which allows for 100% electric driving, but uses up your EV range pretty quickly, and sport, which uses only engine power for maximum performance, but will nullify the reason why you paid so much for this variant in the first place. Plug-in hybrids primarily exist because the industry hasn't yet found an affordable way to create full EV models that can offer the driving range of a conventional engine. The powertrain fitted to the full electric E308 version of this car is a case in point, delivering around 250 miles from a 400-volt battery, offering 50 kilowatt-hours of usable capacity, a mild evolution of the one used in the company's smaller E208 and E2008 models. The E308's 154 horsepower output ought to be enough for a car of this size, but because it shares much the same 1.6-tonne curb weight as the hybrid variants, the initially rapid start-off punch will tail off pretty rapidly. It all means that you might well decide that less is more when it comes to your choice of 308. From a car small in steering wheel and entry-level curb weight, that's really invested itself here. There's plenty of trendy tech as part of that, the digital instruments and the option of things like matrix headlights, automatic lane changing and curve speed adaptation. But basically, what we like here is the return to old-school Peugeot values. Driving enjoyment has been prioritised once again. That's going to be a difficult attribute to maintain in the coming weighty era of electrification, but if the company relinquishes it once again, its premium pretensions will be difficult to justify. Let's hope the Lions learnt its lesson. Peugeot design is currently reinterpreting what compact hatchbacks can look like. With its second generation 208, the company redefined modern super mini styling, and there's a strong argument for suggesting that much the same has been achieved here with this third generation 308 family hatch, that model's larger showroom stablemate. It's perhaps not quite as visually appealing, but it certainly makes a pavement statement. As before, there are hatch and SW estate body styles, both of which have plenty of overtaking presence. There's a longer looking bonnet than before, with a prominent bulge and a lower looking nose bearing the latest, rather different Peugeot badge on its grille, which reinterprets the company's 1960s iconography and is large enough to cover the radar needed for the autonomous driving aids. Flanking this are slimmer LED headlights, available as here with matrix technology and complemented by Peugeot's Fang-like LED daytime running lights. The front-end look changes subtly with trim choice, the grille featuring horizontal chrome stamping on mainstream models or a dark chrome checkered finish on GT variants like this one. In profile, existing owners might notice the extra 11mm of length this time round and the prominent creases that have appeared over the wheel arches, which sit below a stronger shoulder line. Just as noticeable to a brand loyalist will be the 20mm reduction in roof height, directly responsible for the sleeker 0.28 CD drag coefficient reading. Even the wheel designs have been fashioned with this in mind. Sizes range between 16 and 18 inches. We've got 18-inch Portland rims here. GT variants like this one are distinguished by extended lower body sills and front wing lion emblem badging. If you're after the SW Estate version, you might be a little disappointed to find that it's no longer than this hatch variant, but that body style does enjoy an extra 10mm of roof height. At the rear, the LED tail lamps seem almost impossibly thin, decorated on the GT models with a distinctive 3-claw lighting signature, and above base trim linked by this glossy centre strip. Peugeot wants this car to be seen as sporty, so there's this elongated roof spoiler and diffuser-like lower bumper treatment. Under the skin lies a further, third evolution of the EMP2 platform that undergirded this model's predecessor, the changes necessary to allow for the introduction of electrified power plants. These come with a lot of weight, so it's just as well that the body shell remains one of the lightest in the class. The base 1.2-litre model tips the scales at just 1,289 kilos. So, all change outside, will things be equally avant-garde in the cabin? Pretty much, yes. It makes the sort of thing you get in a rival Ford Focus feel very last generation. Here, someone sat down with a clean sheet of paper and reimagined what the dashboard of a 21st century family hatchback really ought to look and feel like. Why is it necessary to view the instruments through the steering wheel? And do those dials really need to be quite as big? Couldn't extra storage space be freed up if you had a less conventional centre console? And if the family hatchbacks of today are going to be priced near the level of luxury saloons from a decade ago, shouldn't they feature trimming quality less reminiscent of public transport? All these questions have been asked and largely answered here, and this interior is all the better for it. Everything's very in your face and angular. Virtually everything you touch feels tactile and of high quality. And as with this model's direct predecessor, the first thing you're going to have to decide is whether you can get on with the distinctive i-cockpit dash design with its tiny steering wheel, above which, rather than through which, you're supposed to view the instruments. We're a bit tired of media folk whinging about this setup. It works fine for us, and apparently we're not alone, because the French maker says the majority of its customers really like it. Every brand ought to have a distinctive element in its interior design, but so few do. Well, for Peugeot, this is it, a setup which makes unnecessary the optional fitment of a head-up display. The gauges you view now of the virtual variety displayed on a 10-inch screen are unusual too, not only because the narrowness of the display forces them to be curiously small, but also because, as with the previous model, the speedos on the left and the rev counter, or as in this case the hybrid power meter, is on the right, a layout contrary to the industry norm. Peugeot obviously hopes that these eccentricities, together with clever 3D graphics for speed, gear ratio and range that hover over the speedometer, will distract drivers from the fact that this screen isn't very configurable, nor can it display any form of navigational mapping. Still, all the information shown is clear and easy to assimilate, with a fuel readout and trip computer data, the whole layout being rather neatly completed by a French tricolor below in the middle. Anything else you need to know will be found in this central infotainment screen. This one also 10 inches in width, but rather deeper and more informative. In the usual way, the home screen can be divided into different sections for audio, phone and setup features, and temperature controls are permanently sited at either edge. A row of 6 shortcut screen options sit just below, and to satisfy people like us who complained about the lack of conventional climate buttons with the previous generation model, there's a further row of physical switches for ventilation features just below, though they're what Peugeot calls i-toggle buttons. So if you want, you can redefine their functionality via the car's app menu. Unlike with some rival screen setups, there's thankfully a physical volume controller too. Plus you get live system updates. Most models feature TomTom connected 3D navigation. And there's the usual Apple CarPlay and Android Auto mirror screen smartphone connectivity. Voice recognition's also built in, though you'll have to avoid bass trim for it to be properly intuitive. Part of the brand's iConnect setup activated by the command, OK Peugeot. Normally, you'd expect this central screen layout to flow down into the lower part of the centre stack, but the designers clearly felt more storage space could be freed up by separating out this angular lower console with its diminutive little impulse selector gear shifting switch. That console's upper edge can take a wireless charging mat, and there's a deep well below with USB-C and 12-volt ports. Copying premium makers, Peugeot has concealed the twin cup holders beneath a slatted lid and given the storage box between the seats, which incorporates another USB-C port, a twin lidded top. Just ahead of that is a phone-sized cubby, plus you get ticket clips in the sun visors and decently sized flock-lined door bins. Best of all, perhaps, this is the only modern-era Peugeot model we can remember in which the size of the glove box hasn't been cut in half on right-hand drive models by an encroaching fuse box. It only took them a couple of decades to sort that out. As a result, this car can now offer a total of 34 litres of front-of-cabin storage space. What else? Well, you sit quite low, which exacerbates the issue of poor rear three-quarter vision served up by the big C-pillar blind spots and narrow rear screen. So it's just as well that rear parking sensors are standardised across the range. Lumbar adjustment comes as standard for the beautifully upholstered seats, though unfortunately you have to stretch right to the top of the range to get them in the uber-supportive, power-operated massaging guise we're trying here, in which form they've gained the coveted stamp of approval by the AGR, who campaign for healthier backs. As we mentioned earlier, just about everything else has also been very nicely trimmed, with soft touch surfaces for the dash top and fascia, ambient lighting strips providing you avoid entry-level trim, and some lovely tactile finishes for plusher GT series variants like this one, which gets Alcantara strips running into the doors and green stitching. For some reason though, there's still not the hewn from granite feel of build quality that you'd get from a Volkswagen Group product. And it's difficult to put your finger on just why, because build quality from the French Mulhouse factory is difficult to fault. Dynamic design, though, compensates hugely, as do little touches like the air quality system that automatically recycles the air distributed by the high-set vents when needed, and which in GT series models is embellished by clean cabin technology, which filters out polluting gases and particles. If you've stretched to one of the GT series models, you'll also like the 10-speaker, 690-watt Focal premium hi-fi system we've been trying here with its neat little A-pillar tweeters. Right, time to take a look in the rear. Now, Peugeot's stretched the wheelbase of this car by 55mm in this third generation form, which is just as well because most of its obvious rivals, cars like Vauxhall's Astra and Ford's Focus, have a fraction more body length, the class exception being the Volkswagen Golf, which is 81mm shorter. You'll want to know what that translates into in terms of rear seat room, so let's take a look. Well, it's certainly not what you'd call spacious back here, or at least it won't be if you've front seat folk of at least average height sitting ahead of you, but with the exception of Skoda's Octavia, no obvious rival in this class does much better. The scalloped out seat backs don't help much with space for your knees, and there's not a lot of room to slide your feet beneath the seats ahead. Headroom's not overly generous either, so you shouldn't be tempted to further reduce it by specifying the optional panoramic glass roof. As at the front though, classy finishing makes up for much. The way the interior part of this centre armrest is trimmed, for instance, is a far cry from a mediocre class norm. There are 2 cup holders and a pen tray here, plus the reasonably sized door bins have bottle holders. Coat hooks have been forgotten on the overhead grab handles, but there are beady little LED reading lights above each one, and there's a centre small cubby with twin USB-C ports and twin vents just above. Finally, let's take a look out back. Now, it's not immediately obvious how to open this rear hatch. The catch is concealed beneath this glossy centre strip, and even on this uber pricey top spec model you have to raise the tailgate yourself, at which point you're faced with quite a sizable loading lip which can't be compensated for with an adjustable height boot floor because Peugeot doesn't offer one. Conventionally engined 308s offer 412 litres back here. That's a big reduction from the 470 litre capacity of the previous model, but still significantly more than you get in this class from a Ford Focus at 358 litres or a Volkswagen Golf at 381. The capacity figure for this Peugeot that we just quoted doesn't apply in this case because we're testing the hybrid version, restricted by the size of the underfloor battery to 361 litres, which is much the same as you'd get from the all-electric E308. Thanks to this loading area's usefully square shape, though, there's still enough room for 5 carry-on suitcases, which is pretty class competitive, meaning that folded pushchairs should fit in with little trouble. The usual floor tie-down points also feature. In this hybrid model with its Focal audio system, there's no extra room of any consequence below the floor. Certainly not enough here for a spare wheel, but more conventional versions can offer 28 litres of extra space down here. Above, a side netting compartment features on the left, and if you avoid entry-level trim, you also get a ski hatch for longer items to compensate for the conventional 60-40 split of the rear bench. Obviously, because of its slightly higher roofline, the SW Estate version has a larger boot, 608 litres in size in conventional variants, or 548 litres if you opt for a hybrid. Fold everything flat, and a conventional 308 hatch will offer you 1,323 litres of capacity, or 1,271 in this hybrid. For the SW Estate, the seats folded figures are 1,634 litres with a conventional model, or 1,574 litres with a hybrid. Peugeot feels confident enough in the style and quality of this third generation 308 to pitch pricing right at the upper end of the segments, which means comparable to the figures being asked for a Volkswagen Golf. Basically, that means that whether you buy at a dealer or via the brand's new buy online portal, you won't be able to get yourself a 308 for less than £25,000. Which might be a bit of a shock for those who haven't replaced their family hatch class car for a few years and find themselves tempted by one of these. If that doesn't put you off, then you'll be choosing between two body styles. The alternative SW Estate version requires £1,200 more from you than this standard 5-door hatch, and 5 trim levels: Active Premium, Allure, Allure Premium, GT, and this top GT Premium version. You'll have to have automatic transmission. The brand's EAT8 Auto is now mandatory, but there's plenty of choice in terms of what lies beneath the bonnet. The value obviously lies with the conventional engines at the foot of the range. The 1.2-litre PureTech 130 petrol, or, for around £1,300 more, the alternative 1.5-litre Blue HDI 130 diesel. It's a big step up to get yourself a plug-in hybrid derivative like the one we're trying today. From launch and at the time of this test in late summer 2022, the least you could pay for a 308 PHEV was around £34,000, which gets you the lesser hybrid 180 variant. Further up the range, you'll have the option of finding around £1,500 more for the quicker hybrid 225 version we're trying here, but by the time you've budgeted for that, you'll be paying plenty. At the time of filming, the top hybrid 225 GT Premium model we're trying here listed at just under £40,000. Yes, you heard that right. At the time of this test, we didn't yet have a guide price for the full electric E308 model, but if you were to budget a fraction above the figures that Peugeot's asking for the PHEV versions, you probably wouldn't be too far out. On to the value proposition those kinds of asking figures represent. We mentioned comparability with the Volkswagen Golf earlier. Well, that's not quite accurate. The lead-in price for a Golf is indeed just over £25,000, or was at the time of filming, just like a 308. But that only gets you manual transmission with that Volkswagen. At the time of making this video, you needed to pay well over £27,000 for the least expensive automatic Golf, around £2,000 more than the equivalent auto-only 308. So value hasn't been entirely overlooked as part of Peugeot's pricing strategy here. On the contrary, a base 308 1.2 PureTech 130 actually costs much the same as an equivalent automatic 1-litre Ford Focus, and also much the same as equivalent base automatic versions of the Seat Leon, the Skoda Octavia and the Mazda 3. Unlike all the rivals we've so far mentioned, this Peugeot does without trendy, mild hybrid tech, but you don't need to worry about that because this 308's efficiency figures are just as good as you'll find with the rivals just mentioned. Those stats, by the way, are almost identically replicated by the 8th generation Vauxhall Astra model that shares all of this Peugeot's engineering, but actually costs around £1,300 more in equivalent automatic form. Another Stellantis Group contender, the Citroën C4, also shares the engineering on offer here. One of those with the same engine and gearbox combination would cost about the same, but would give you more standard equipment. That's not to say you can't get an equivalent car of this kind for less than Peugeot's asking here. Of course you can. If you don't have to have automatic transmission and can cope with a little less power, then you can pay a lot less in this segment. The manual gearbox-only Kia Ceed springs to mind. And that Korean car's identically engineered cousin, the Hyundai i30, would save you over £3,000 with automatic transmission and mild hybrid tech thrown into the 1-litre T GDI 120 PS DCT model in question. We ought to say a word about the 308 in plug-in hybrid form because it's really a separate proposition entirely, priced, as we said earlier, from around £34,000. The identically engineered Vauxhall Astra plug-in hybrid E would save you around £700 over a base 308 hybrid 180 variant, but a comparable Skoda Octavia 1.4 TSI IV would cost around £1,000 more, and a comparable Volkswagen Golf e-hybrid would cost you about £1,600 more. Even if you're shopping at the very top of the range with the hybrid 225 GT Premium model we're trying here, you won't pay very much more than you'd need for an equivalent Volkswagen Golf GTE, and you'd be getting heaps more standard equipment. Enough with the comparisons. Let's say that you've decided that it is a 308 that you really want. If so, then you're going to need to know about standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. As you'd hope for the money being asked here, even entry-level active premium spec gives you quite a lot. Specifically, you get 16-inch Auckland alloy wheels, eco LED headlamps, LED daytime running lights, claw effect LED rear lights, power folding mirrors, auto headlamps and wipers, a multi-driving mode selector with eco, normal and sport settings, an acoustic tinted windscreen, rear parking sensors, a Thatcham Category 1 approved alarm and a very complete level of camera safety kit which we'll cover off for you in a moment. Inside, with an active premium 308 variant, there's automatic air conditioning, an electrochrome frameless rear view mirror, driver's seat lumbar adjustment, sports pedals, a 10-inch digital instrument cluster, and a curiously small multifunction split leather and gloss steering wheel as part of the unusual Peugeot iCockpit dash design. Media connectivity is taken care of by another 10-inch screen, this one the central infotainment monitor, which incorporates voice recognition, a 6-speaker DAB audio system, Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. You can also interact with your 308 when you're away from it, thanks to the My Peugeot app. Via this, you can see essential data like fuel consumption and fuel level, plus you can make servicing appointments and access a digital handbook. The next step up in the 308 range lies with Allure trim, which will have to be your starting point in the lineup if you want a hybrid model or if you want your 308 to come with navigation, Peugeot's connected 3D setup. Allure spec stands out a bit more thanks to larger 17-inch Calgary diamond cut alloy wheels, horizontal chrome stamping on the grille, chromed exhaust surrounds, signature LED daytime running lights, and a gloss black connecting strip between the rear lamp clusters. Also added are front parking sensors and dark tinted rear, side and tailgate windows. Inside at Allure level, there's upholstery, part trimmed in Isabella synthetic leather, ambient lighting for the door panels, an AQS3 air quality system, a Visio Park 1 180-degree colour reversing camera, a rear seat ski hatch and LED lit sun visors with concealable mirrors. Plus, the infotainment screen gains OK Peugeot voice recognition. For not much more, embellished Allure Premium spec adds keyless entry, a wireless phone charger, a wireless connection for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a smarter Halong design for the 17-inch wheels, and a drive assist pack with extra camera safety features, which we'll tell you more about shortly. Things start to get really luxurious at GT level, marked out by 18-inch Kamakura alloy wheels, a dark chromed checkered radiator grille, extended front and side lower body sills, lion emblem badging on the front wings, and on the SW Estate, gloss black roof rails. The headlights gain intelligent matrix technology, which the tail lamps play a sequential welcome sequence when you unlock the car. A driver sport pack adds a personalised colour theme to the digital instrument display and sport adjustment for the steering and accelerator pedal. The steering wheel gains heat, green stitching and full grain leather, plus there's a Mistral black roof liner and aluminium door sills. To that tally, this top GT Premium version adds a smarter Portland design for the 18-inch alloy wheels, plus a 360-degree surround view camera system, and, on the SW version, a powered smart tailgate with a foot sensor. Inside at GT Premium level, there's a 10-speaker, 690-watt Focal Premium hi-fi system with a 12-channel amplifier and Archimedes digital sound processing. Plus, the powered driver's seat features adjustable cushions and massage settings and is approved by the AGR, who campaign for healthy backs. Plus, both front seats are heated. On to options. Now, you can add connected 3D navigation into a base active premium model, but not much else. With Allure Spec, you can add keyless entry and a heated steering wheel, while Allure Premium allows you to add the 360-degree surround view camera system. With GT trim, you can add in the Focal Premium Hi-Fi package, and with both GT and GT Premium variants, you can add an opening glass sunroof. Go for the SW Estate, and you'll need to stretch to GT trim for the chance to add a powered tailgate. All SW variants can be fitted with a boot-load restraining net, and all 308s can be had with a tow bar. Bear in mind that you'll almost certainly have to pay your dealer extra for your choice of paint shade. Even solid Bianca White costs extra. The only standard colours, both metallics, are olivine green on the hatch and avatar blue on the SW. There are also various pricier, special and pearlescent shades like the elixir red finish we have here. On to safety equipment. Now, as you'd expect, all variants get autonomous braking, Peugeot's active safety brake system, which can specifically pick out both pedestrians and cyclists, but can't work at night unless you avoid entry-level trim. Disappointingly, with that base spec level, you do without the brand's Connect SOS safety system too, which will alert the emergency services with your GPS location if the airbags go off. All 308s do get an automatic post-collision braking system, which will brake the car after an impact so that you're less likely to go on and hit something else. Lane keeping assist is also standardised across the lineup, and from Allure Spec upwards, there's high beam assist to automatically dip your headlights for you at night. Earlier we mentioned the driver assist pack you get from Allure Premium Spec upwards. This primarily gives you long-range blind spot detection, which alerts you if you're about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle. Rear cross-traffic alert, which warns you of oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space. And adaptive cruise control with stop and go, which automatically maintains your speed to vehicles in front on the highway, and when you come across a tailback, will seamlessly bring you to a stop, then, when appropriate, automatically start you off again. 3 further drive assist pack features include curve speed adaptation, which will automatically throttle back if you enter a bend too fast, anticipated speed recommendation, which suggests adapting your speed based on current limit signs, and semi-automatic lane change, which can perform semi-automatic lane change manoeuvres. With a top GT Premium Spec model like this one, the Driver Assist Pack will further include lane positioning assist too, which is about the closest this car gets to semi-autonomous drive capability. Of course, across the range, all the usual passive safety features come included. Twin front, side and curtain airbags, twin ISOFIX child seat fittings for the rear bench, front seat safety headrests, ESP stability control and ABS with automatic hazard light activation for heavy braking. The efficiency stats you get with the volume PureTech 130 petrol version of this 308 will make annoying reading to all those manufacturers in this segment who've invested so heavily in mild hybrid engine technology. This Peugeot does without that, yet manages in PureTech 130 form to return fuel and CO2 readings that are hardly any different to those of competitors with mild electrification 48-volt packages fitted. Specifically, we're talking 52.1 mpg on the combined cycle and 122 grams per kilometre of CO2, which, to give you some class perspective, is slightly better than a Ford Focus 1-litre EcoBoost 125 PS MHEV Auto, but marginally worse than a Volkswagen Golf 1-litre ETSI Auto 110 PS DSG. If issues of electrification have passed you by and you're still happy to slosh in the evil black pump fluid, then you'll find that a 308 1.5 Blue HDI 130 diesel can manage up to 65.3 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 113 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's way better than a rival Ford Focus 1.5 EcoBlue diesel auto, 61.4 mpg and 120 grams per kilometre. We have a suspicion that in real-world terms, a 308 diesel variant is probably the most fuel-efficient version of this car you can run. Yes, the petrol hybrid derivatives quote three-figure combined cycle figures up to 281.1 mpg for the hybrid 180 and up to 266.2 mpg for this hybrid 225 variant. But the reality is that the 1.6-litre turbo petrol unit that features in these derivatives won't be especially economic once the 36 to 37 mile EV range in either case is used up, which means in reality that you can probably expect running cost returns somewhere between the conventional PureTech and Blue HDI versions. Where the hybrid models do hold a cost advantage is with their low 8% benefit-in-kind tax exposure, made possible by a CO2 return that can be as low as 23 grams per kilometre for the hybrid 180 variant. The lowest is 24 grams per kilometre for this hybrid 225 version. A hybrid meter gauge on the dash helps you drive economically if you stay out of the power section and keep the needle in eco for best results. And you can monitor your zero emissions running via a neat cyan LED zero emissions driving indicator light in the frameless rear view mirror. From a household socket, both PHEV variants will be replenished in just over 7 hours. You'll find 3.7 kilowatt single phase charging supported as standard, which means recharges will take 3 hours and 50 minutes. A 7.4 kilowatt on-board charger is available as an option, and with that fitted and your 308 hybrid plugged into a wall box, the battery will take 1 hour and 55 minutes to be topped up. The plug-in hybrid 308 variants offer a thermal preconditioning function too. Via the My Peugeot smartphone app or by using the vehicle's touchscreen, owners can schedule a wake-up time for the battery. This means that the cells can be at the optimal temperature for efficiency from the time you start up. Plus, of course, the interior can also be pre-cooled or preheated too. Of course, you'll need to allow longer to charge if you choose the full EV version of this car, the E308. This has a 400-volt battery with 50 kilowatt-hours of usable capacity, or 54 kilowatt-hour gross, and should go around 250 miles between charges. Those charging times hadn't been confirmed at the time of making this film, but we wouldn't expect them to be much different from those of the brand's smaller E208, which uses an older generation version of the same battery. That would mean a full charge from empty taking 7.5 hours. And with a public 50 kilowatt rapid charger, the replenishment time to charge from 15 to 80% being 45 minutes. If you're fortunate enough to find a 100 kilowatt rapid charger with your E308, that would fall to around 30 minutes. At the time of this test, Peugeot was offering all PHEV and EV customers a free 6-month charging subscription with BP Pulse. And for those who don't yet have a home charger, the brand's partner PodPoint can fit one and allow you to take advantage of the available £350 government grant. Owners can opt to purchase any 308 with a single service plan to cover all essential maintenance. And if you've chosen the E308 EV, you'll be given a certificate of battery capacity after each service. That variant's 50 kilowatt-hour battery comes with an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty for 70% of its capacity. Finally, insurance groups. Both the 1.2 litre PureTech and 1.5 litre Blue HDI diesel models rate between Group 19E and 21E. For the hybrid 180, it's between Groups 26E and 28E, and for this hybrid 225, it's between Groups 29E and 30E. Peugeot isn't just building a car with this third generation 308, it's building a reputation. For too long, this much-loved brand lost sight of what made people want its products. Now it's setting out to build desirable machines once more, models that aren't simply playing catch-up or trying to copy the big sellers. Sure enough, this is a vehicle with a definite feel of its own. It's not going to appeal to everybody, but it is now a car that the company can rightly feel proud of. A contender good enough to worry the best in the business. After all, it gets so many things so right. French family hatchbacks in this class haven't always been able to justify themselves either in terms of quality or in the harder discipline of pounds and pence running costs. But this one performs beyond expectations in both those areas. And in E308 form, it sets a new trend for full EV-powered family hatchbacks that quite a few rival mainstream brands are going to have to copy. Of course, you may not like these sharky looks, and the unusual i-cockpit dash design is certainly divisive, so try before you buy. Those used to the previous generation model might find the ride a little firm, and especially with the hybrid models, the pricing certainly pushes this car uncomfortably close to what's being charged for premium brand compact hatchbacks of similar size. Overall, though, what's on offer here is a car that's continuing to restore Peugeot's reputation for building elegant, comfortable and understated vehicles. A car that gives the brand a shot at making good on its upmarket aspirations. It's been a long time coming.